For those who don't know me, I am Alexander Immerzeel. I work at Split Polygon, a company I helped co-found with the people over there in the corner. They're hiding. These are some of the many hats which I have to wear within the team. It's actually not impressive. So, for those who don't know what Interstellar Rift is, Interstellar Rift is a multiplayer open-world space sim where the player is not confined to the cockpit. Players will also be able to fully customize their ships from the ground up. That means from both the interior and the exterior. So basically, you build an interior of a ship. You make sure it's equipped with engines, with power cores, etc., weapons, and you can use that to survive with your friends or alone in a procedurally generated galaxy. So we've been working on it for about 2 years now. Back when we in 2012 we started work. We had an idea after a very long game of Gary's mod, Space Build, which, well, if anyone who's played Gary's mod, it doesn't really work all that well. I mean, you try to build something and it just droops a little bit. It's not really. It didn't really work the way we wanted it to. But we were really interested in the idea of a space sim that actually did things, it was purpose built for custom spaceships and still have that sort of ragtag feel that Gary's mod had. So we started working with about 5 people, which is, okay. We started working with about 5 people. That's better. We started working with about 5 people, which we haven't expanded beyond that yet. But we quickly knew that the game we wanted to make was a lot bigger than the five of us could actually put together. So we had to set quite a few limitations on what we were going to make. And that heavily influenced our art style. For example, since players can design their own ships, everything we made for the ships themselves had to be modular. From the interior, as you can see on the picture, you see a lot of repeated geometry. You had to make sure it's easy to see what it is from the get-go. Has function. It has to be. We have to be able to make it very quickly because, well, if you want to be able to make the ship that you want a lot of pieces to work with. And, well, the quickest way we knew how to do that was to keep everything with a very angular design. One of the quickest things you can make in 3D is a cube. So early on we started out looking at other games that did something similar to what we had envisioned. At the time, the biggest source of inspiration was the RTS called Planetary Annihilation, which recently finished its development cycle after a successful Kickstarter and everything. We really liked their initial art style, which we took a lot of inspiration from. But, well, that's an RTS, and what we're making is a first-person experience. So we had to kind of modify that. So we started looking at other forms of media for our art style, and one of the biggest influences we had was Alien, which, here you have a picture of one of the lower levels of the Nostromo from Alien. And to quickly summarize what we did with both these sources of inspiration is this. And that is very dark. Basically, basically, what we took both the designs, we simplified it, made it small, made it work in both the schedule we set for ourselves in order to produce these pieces. And well, we tried to well, not obviously copy it one-on-one, but we tried to stay true to the original vision that the alien movies had. These are some of the earliest, actually these are the first concept designs we made for how our game was going to look. Here you can see wait, I can barely see it, but the layout for these ships was laid out on a grid. A grid that we managed to stick to even to the final version. We wanted to make sure that the interior, which is where you'll be spending most of your time during the game, would define the ship that you made. So you build your interior first, and then the game itself will generate a hull around it, which is this is a mock-up of what we wanted to do with the hull in terms of this this interior design. And here you can see both the elements that we used for the to build this thing, and where everything sort of should have gone. I didn't really have a clean image anymore since, well, this was 2 years ago. And the entire game had to be, the entire environment is made with one texture. This texture. This texture is pure evil. It is one of the hardest things I've ever had to work with, which has been designed by that hellspawn over there. It is not fun to work with, but it does allow us to actually make our interior blocks really quickly, and you don't have to spend a lot of time texturing. However, UVing is a nightmare. And this is what the game looks like today. You can see it still it sort of holds true to what we well, I mean, this is the interior today. Sorry, the editor for today. As you can see, we still held true to what the original designs were. I mean, it's still based on a grid, and you still place all of the interior systems on that same grid. Although we do have a separate grid for stuff like props, smaller items which are not as essential and not as level defining as the interior. And as I said with the previous, you can it automatically generates a hull around it, and this is a hull of our of the mining station which we added in the patch today. But it shows us that that part of this is automatically generated, and part of it is player generated, player designed, such as the large solar panel on the side, which players can make on their own. Aside from the environment, we also wanted to make sure characters, players could customize their own characters. Seeing as this is a first-person game, this is the primary way players will usually see each other. So we took some inspiration from pre-existing space games. Another one of the limits on how to approach character customization is everybody wears helmets, since none of us has experience making a decent character face or a character facial customization option. Also, we have no concept artists, so most of what we did was modeled by freehand. You just start modeling and then hope something nice comes out. Now, this was our first iteration of our character. which we call Steve. And after a while, we started to like Steve, and we started showing him around. And that's when it becomes clear that sometimes for important things like characters, you kind of need someone to design these things, because the first piece of criticism everybody gave us was, it looks like this guy. But yeah, making a game and using Microsoft's poster boy as your one of your characters is not a good idea. So we partially scrapped him, and we went to this. Now this is a character which I designed. Well, the concept, the drawing is one I made. However, as you can see, the character that's actually in game, which is the one next to it, they don't look too much alike anymore. That's mostly because we eventually were pressed for time, and we just had to cannibalize Steve to put this into the game. But now that we actually have a little bit of money, we actually hired a concept artist to start making some actual designs for us. The one on the left is going to be a sort of base which all of the other armors and outfits are going to be sort of drawn over on. And the right one is just one we had originally asked for before we actually came up with the idea of, hey, maybe we can save a little bit of money by actually having paint over the same image over and over again. As for the space environment, we went for rule of cool space, so not actual space, since, well, actual space can be pretty boring in a video game. Although, unless you're going for something like Kerbal Space Program, which, well, we are not. So it kind of has to be realistic, but it also has to be visually appealing. A lot of the colors that you see in NASA photos are actually added afterwards, but you don't really want a black and white game constantly. So we came up with this for the space environment. So yeah, this is basically a simple nebula with asteroids in it. Unlike the ship interiors, we went for, well, like I said, a bit more realistic approach. These are some of the ships. Sorry, this is a ship which one of the guys on the team made, and the other is a space station which every player starts on. So aside from characters and then environments, of course you have weapons, which is one of the things that you'll probably be seeing the most of, since they'll be constantly in your face. Unlike some of the environments and the characters, sorry, not the characters, but most of the environments where we actually stuck to a more cube design, lots of 45-degree angles. And, we tried to keep that same visual aesthetic with the guns. However, since these are going to be constantly in your face, we felt these can have a bit of a round elements to them. So as you can see at the back of the gun with the logo and the canister at the back, which kind of turned out like this. It's not in the game yet. None of the weapons are actually in the game, so it's not been in focus yet. But as I said, the talk is called the art so far. Yeah. This is the med injector, which is going to be in the game hopefully pretty soon, since we're going to be starting on player health and death soon. And this is the plasma pistol, which is actually what the plasma rifle was based on. This is not the obviously it's not texture good and everything, but it is basically what we use to base everything else in terms of aesthetic for the guns on. And recently we found out that our game, at least the free version, which we've been releasing as we've been releasing the game since March of this year in a pre-alpha state, which anyone can download for free, try out, give us feedback, whatever you want. And we recently found it on porn sites, even though it's free. So
it's a good thing.
Apparently, they'll put anything on there these days. And that was my talk.
I have to say those characters look freaking cool, right? The characters look cool. I want to give another round of applause for Alex. I do think we have been on for a few questions, so go and think of a few. I have a question of myself as well. Like, this project is pretty ambitious, right? What are your future plans for Interstellar Rift? Where do you want to take this?
We want to take it to the point where players can actually sort of live in a virtual spaceship of their own. So the idea is that you build your own spaceship, you mine the resources for it, you keep it maintained, you get the fuel for it, and then you try to survive with it. And you can do that in a multiplayer server which you can host on your own. We're aiming for 64 players on a single server. We hope to go higher than that eventually. And the galaxy itself will be procedurally generated. So every server that you join will be completely unique.
That is quite ambitious. I think because we are running overtime, I think we have room for maybe 2 questions. I see one hand here.
So, what exactly is the gameplay of, well, the game? I mean, you've got weapons for the players on board, but what about, and you just said that there's 64 players on a single server. Is there ship-to-ship combat? Is there, well, what is there?
There will be ship-to-ship combat. There will also be combat where, for example, you can group up with several smaller ships to attack a larger ship. This ship can be NPC or player controlled. And the primary idea behind the interior weapons is, for example, you have a small ship with a crew of maybe 3 or 4 people, and you attack another player ship. And then you, for example, during combat, the shields of the opposing ship drop. So then you can use your onboard teleporter to teleport aboard their ship and then try to steal or actually raid their cargo bay or
further. A crew of 3 to 4 people. Is that 3 to 4 people on the same ship?
On the same ship, yeah. But right now you can join as crew members. You can even stow away if you want. Right now we can actually have up to 64 players on a single ship.
I would love to stow away on the ship.
Alright, one last question and then we're going to go back to games. I see a hand there. You have to probably walk closer.
I was kind of wondering about the scope of the project. Will there be like exploring planets, quest systems? Is there an end goal to finish the game, or is it infinite?
Basically, the idea is that the game will never end unless you actually have to set your own goals. But well, seeing as we have a very small team doing stuff like planetary services and that sort of thing, that's kind of beyond our scope. Right now, we're just sticking to space, and that's where you'll live, and that's where you'll probably die.
I want another round of applause for Alex. And also thank you for your attention for his presentation.